Hey, I'm Kevin. I'm the lead instructor at Hardscape Training Canada, and we offer free online classes, some of them are free, training videos on YouTube, and just here to promote the hardscape industry. And I'm a hardscaper.
What's happening, Hardscapers? This is episode 165 of the How to Hardscape podcast, where we talk about how you can start and grow your hardscaping business. And today's episode is brought to you by Inlight Outdoor Lighting. You can check them out at Inlight Design on Instagram. Get some inspiration from their page. Reach out to them if you're looking for outdoor lighting solutions in your business, as well as Cycle CPA. And if you need bookkeeping, accounting, or CFO services, you should definitely reach out to Cycle CPA. They're at cycle_CPA on Instagram. They post amazing educational content on their page as well, so definitely worth a follow. Go to cyclecpa.com, and when you register with them for their services, let them know that How to Hardscape sent you for $200 off. And today we're joined by Kevin of Hardscape Training Canada. And we get into a lot of great topics with Kevin, including getting into natural stonework, his story, and then what he's doing today to help educate and to give back to the industry. So without further ado, let's get into today's episode. All right, Kevin, let's get to know a little bit more about you yourself, how you got started in the industry. Let's give our audience a little bit of context about how your beginnings started with this industry.
Sure, yeah. So I started in this industry when I was 16 years old. It was sort of my first job. And I remember those days like shoveling river rock with a giant scoop shovel, not thinking I was going to be able to cut it. But here I am now 20 years later, and I worked for a couple landscape construction companies in Calgary. I was doing a lot of like paving stones and segmental retaining walls. And then I ended up moving out to Victoria after doing a landscape management diploma at Olds College. And then I got to specialize in natural stone since I moved out here, which has been awesome. It's been my real calling, I would say. And I parlayed that into a masonry company for a few years with a couple other guys and a crew. And since then, I've started teaching at the Pacific Horticulture College. So with that sort of teaching aspect, I realized that there was a lot to give there in the industry. So I decided to start Hardscape Canada Training Inc., where I teach. I have online classes, and yeah, I also work with other crews and do some hands-on sort of finishing work as well as teaching them at the same time. So it's been a lot of fun.
All right, lots of things came up there that I'm just trying to take notes on so I don't forget, and I got a lot of questions for you. You mentioned the landscape management, going to school for that. What were some things that you were able to pick from that really helped you set up, for moving out west and starting that masonry business with a few other guys? Were there specific things that really helped you kind of learn and transfer over to the industry? If we can touch on that a little bit.
Sure. I think one of the reasons why I really enjoyed teaching is that I didn't really get as much out of the hardscape portion through that college class as I wanted to. So I always felt like I wanted to redo it somehow. So this is my chance to do that now, and teaching other people. But I think the biggest thing that I learned is we have to think about not only the hardscape aspects, but everything that the landscape involves. So all the little things that add up to make the project really beautiful in the end. So we need to think about like depths of soil for plant material. Obviously, like putting in sleeves. We need to think like an irrigation tech, like a plant person, like a drainage specialist. We need to think about everything in terms of the landscape. So that's really what I sort of learned and pulled from my college program is just not thinking just specifically about hardscape, but everything involved in the landscape to do hardscapes well.
Definitely. That's one thing that I'm actively trying to improve on is like, I wish I had more knowledge in the softscape side of things so that I can really transfer that over to my business. I feel like I'm very specialized in that hardscape sort of industry. If somebody, I get this question a lot. If somebody was to go to college for something, what would you recommend they go to college for in terms of this industry? Would you recommend them that they go to that landscape management college degree? Would you recommend them to, skip college because you'll learn more in the field if you just start working for somebody because you don't necessarily need that college degree to start your own business or something like that? Like, what's your advice if somebody reaches out to you and says, hey, what do I do here if I want to get into this industry?
I think there's a lot of value with sort of both. So you definitely need to work with someone and learn a lot from them, like how they run their business even. all the way down to like how they actually complete projects. But what I've noticed is a lot of companies do things differently. So it's nice to even work for a couple of companies, sort of pick out the best pieces of each. I have found a lot of value in that landscape management diploma just to have it. I've never had a problem getting a job. I've only actually applied for a couple in my life, I suppose. But as soon as you have that, like, you can basically work anywhere in Canada with a diploma in landscape management. And I think it's changed now. It's a Red Seal program. So yeah, there's so much value in that. And you can take those skills and diversify into so many different things. So yeah, I definitely recommend a little bit of both.
And then you move out west. I believe that's where we are in the timeline, and you start your own business with a few other guys. What was that kind of experience like? Partnerships are something that's interesting, and when I hear about anybody getting into a partnership, I like to kind of pick out what were the pros and cons of it. But just starting there, kind of, what was the learning experience like getting into business for yourself, especially with a few other guys there?
Yeah, definitely a big learning curve. A lot of experience, I would say. So a lot of hard lessons. Basically, every project you learn something, which is always good. You don't want to learn too many hard lessons, but good to add that experience up and build yourself a little bit farther along in the future. I think the biggest thing was the perspective of having partners that I took was that they basically already had their own little established businesses before. So we almost just teamed up. It was like myself as a single stonemason and then two other guys doing similar things. So it sort of made sense to just combine forces. So it was a bit different than just like taking on a classic business partner that might have like complementary skills. We basically were like clones of each other almost with our own little different niches slightly. So yeah, it was really cool. We did so much good work together, had lots of fun. But yeah, I mean, obviously you're splitting profit as well between two other guys in a three-way partnership. So yeah, it makes it challenging sometimes financially, and yeah, I don't know. It was a lot of fun, but I'm definitely at that point where yeah, it made sense to go off on my own again, and sort of I always like to find a new path and see where things go, and I'm not just sort of stuck in one zone all the time. So yeah, it's good.
Yeah, that's interesting because I think that's where like this industry is headed, that kind of hybrid partnership model where everybody kind of wants to own their own business, but there's just not enough labor to fill every business. And then we all kind of work together to be able to get jobs done in that sense and to move forward in that industry. Is that kind of like what you guys saw in your market, at least, to do that?
Yeah, and there's a big labor shortage as well, especially out here. So yeah, it made sense for us to just like be three finishers that could do like larger projects and service some of the bigger contractors. Like we did a lot of natural stone facing and stuff like that primarily. So yeah, it was nice to be able to have more resources, and I like doing the business stuff. So I was like, as you can see by my Instagram and stuff, like I love doing that sort of back end stuff, and they were more focused on the work, and managing clients and stuff as well was sort of my forte, I would say. So yeah, it's kind of fun to be able to mix and match a little bit and focus on what you really like to do, when you have a couple other guys that can back you up.
So what's the catalyst that you get to a point where you start you're instructing other businesses and other people? What was that jump off period to say like, hey, I'm doing this kind of partnership business with a couple other guys, but now I want to transition over to that? What was that kick in the butt to start doing that?
You know what? It was a pretty random phone call from the Pacific Horticulture College here. They were looking for someone to take on a hardscape training role as their instructor, and I got the call and I was like, yeah, I've been working towards this unknowingly for a while. I had sequences of all the projects that I've done, like pictures and all that information gathered already. So I was able to plug all that stuff into like a pretty solid training program right off the bat. So yeah, I jumped in on it and I met with the college director, and she basically hired me like almost as the meeting went on. I was like, wait, did I get the job? So yeah, it worked out really good. And that first group of students ended up giving me what I call a sitting ovation. So I was like, all right, I'm in the right place. So it was pretty cool.
Amazing. So yeah, you get that job. You're starting to teach. What were some I guess going off that kind of labor shortage point, what are some things that you hear and see from students in a program like that? Are they very like interested and wanting to get into this type of industry immediately outside of school? I guess like what are their if they do kind of express themselves to you, what are their thoughts on the industry? Does it change from the start of the program to the end of the program? If you could kind of elaborate maybe on some stories that you hear from students.
Yeah, I think they're also fortunate that there's so much work, and especially in Victoria, that like they're all working already, either part time. In the full time program, they're taking obviously time off for school, but they're full on in the industry already. A lot of them, they're just trying to figure out which direction they want to go, and that's what's really cool. Like a lot of them are more gardening focused. So the hardscape stuff is really just sort of an add-on. I try to give as much value I can to them to do simple little hardscape projects even for their clients. So I think the cool thing about it is that like I always try to make sure that they know that there's so many different little niches you can get into in this industry. So yeah, I just try to make sure that they keep their eyes open and gain as much experience as they can. And yeah, often they come in sort of not knowing anything about hardscape and they leave thinking that they want to get into that side of the industry. So yeah, it's pretty cool.
And then, out of my own curiosity, are these students that you think will be starting their own businesses, or are these students that are keen on being employed? Just because I see more and more with people that, you know what, they want to start their own business and not necessarily be employed. And I've seen that kind of on the rise in my short lifespan here. But what's if that ever does come up, or what are your thoughts on that in terms of students coming through?
Yeah, I mean it's a nice mix I find actually. So there's usually a small group that like wants to work for a municipality and sort of have a good long-term job. There's usually a good group that is yeah, really keyed into having their own business and seeing where that goes. And then there's some that are like it's a bit of an age range as well. So there's some that are younger and they just want to work for someone, get out of school with something that they can utilize to get a really good job and yeah, start to gain some experience over the next few years and see where that goes. So yeah, it's kind of a cool place that they're all in.
So then you start Hardscape Training Canada. Is that based on what you're doing at the college and kind of transferring that knowledge over to more of an online space, as well as you mentioned serving also other businesses and training their employees? Where does that fit into the story, if we can continue with that?
Yeah. So I realized that I was developing all this content for my college program. And a lot of it is, yeah, like imagery that I've collected over the years and all of like my knowledge that I really want to give to people. So it made sense just to format it into online classes, try to keep it as cost effective as possible. They're actually pretty cheap. And just, yeah, try to get as much value as I can out there for the industry. We're still at that point where even the term hardscape isn't overly well known. But it's growing very, very quickly. So it seemed like the time to sort of put myself out there in that way. And yeah, all my online content like YouTube and stuff, as you do as well. Yeah, it's getting quite popular. So yeah, it just made sense to get into the training side of things and start to build this brand from not just myself, but try to make it a little bit bigger and yeah, just try to help promote the industry and grow it.
I just want to take a break from today's episode to talk about our sponsor, Cycle CPA. You may have a CRM or project management software in place, but what data are you using to ensure your estimating is accurate? Having a proper accounting setup and accurate bookkeeping done is key to understanding overhead expenses and other costs that must be recouped in your estimates. Cycle CPA is a remote bookkeeping and CFO firm that helps to connect the dots from the financial reports to the hardscape and landscape data needed in order to reach high profits. They provide landscape and hardscape industry benchmarking, job costing, financials by service line, advisory meetings, and much more. Cycle CPA's team of accountants are specialized within the hardscape and landscape industry, and you can visit them at cyclecpa.com, and for $200 off, mention the How to Hardscape podcast. Now back to our episode. We also want to say thank you to Inlight for sponsoring today's episode. Did you know that one of the easiest ways to grow your hardscape business and increase your revenue is by incorporating low voltage outdoor lighting to your projects? Using lighting can take your projects to the next level, make you more profit, and add that wow factor and make your business stand out. As a professional hardscaper, we know you need reliable and high quality products to avoid callbacks and wasted time on job sites. That's why Inlight offers some of the highest quality lights and is the quickest system to install on the market. Their patented Easy Lock connector ensures that lighting will be the easiest thing you install every time. No heavy lifting, no massive machinery, just plug and play. Not only that, but Inlight also provides many educational resources like online and in-person training, installation videos, unbeatable customer support, and more. Everything you need to successfully take your business to the next level with outdoor lighting and beyond. It's one of the many reasons why I stand behind Inlight and many other companies that provide these educational resources to their clients, to contractors, and to help us grow our businesses. So for more information on how Inlight can help grow your business, check them out on Instagram at Inlight Design. That's at INLITE Design on Instagram. DM them to find out how to put more money in your pocket this season.
Now, and we mentioned this kind of just before this interview, but you do a lot of natural stone work. As somebody that myself that doesn't do a whole lot of natural stone work, I'm interested as to why such a prominence on natural stone in your area, or you yourself, and the beautiful work that you do there.
Yeah, thanks. Natural stone in Victoria and Vancouver as well is just so readily available for like retaining walls and that sort of thing. It's basically like $40 for a couple tons. So it's really cheap. It's everywhere. People have to blast out for their foundations for houses on this natural bedrock that we're sitting on. So it just makes sense that there's sort of an industry for that. And there's like generations of older masons that have built up Victoria over time. So we're sort of the newer generation here, sort of taking the mantle, and it's kind of cool to build on their styles and refine them a little bit more. But also it's just like that West Coast feeling. So I actually use quite a bit of Pennsylvania bluestone. And the reason why I think it works here is because it has that West Coast vibe. It's a sandstone, but also we don't deal with the freeze thaw that everywhere else in Canada does, basically. So it allows us to use some materials that might not work quite as well when there's that like expansion contraction with the high degree of temperature change. So yeah, it kind of is a little bit different in our industry here based off of the freeze thaw cycles alone.
Since it's so prominent there, are you able to, like, how does the cost compare when dealing with a client if they go the natural stone route or if they go the concrete paver route? Because here, like, we're definitely more expensive going the natural stone route for sure. Even if it is like, even if we're not having to shape any natural stone, even if it's just a square cut, going in like a normal patio, what is it like over there when you're getting into natural stone as opposed to the concrete paver route?
Yeah, it's definitely more expensive. Often the actual cost of material can be almost double what paving stones are. And we're on the island here too, so it's a little bit tricky to get stuff shipped over, which I think adds a bit of cost. But we also are dealing with like generally a pretty high-end clientele here. So we get a lot of people from Calgary, Edmonton that are like cashing out there and moving here. I've had tons of clients that are bringing their money over to Victoria and sort of settling down. So yeah, there's a bit of a higher end, I would say, client here as well. So they're willing to pay for that sort of more natural texture and more beautiful look, I would say. And also I'll mention, like, in contrast to that, like, we, up until recently, we didn't really have access to that many of the more modern paving stone styles. So as like trends have changed a little bit, we're starting to see like the really popular stuff, like I see you do in Ontario. It's starting to sort of trickle out here, and we're having some changes in manufacturing as well. So I think I'm pretty sure Bellegarde just took over Abbotsford Concrete Products. I might be mixing that up with another company, but anyway, we're going to get a bunch more options. So I'm sure we'll see a bit of a change in terms of the different products that we use here for most of our surfaces too.
It's interesting how, that kind of influences what comes into the market and what people start to install. And it kind of works from that East Coast out to the West Coast kind of feeling with that. With you mentioned the higher end clientele. When you moved over there from Calgary, how did you start to get into that mixture? Was it and find these clients? Was it just a matter of, you know what, not a lot of people were doing that natural stone type of work, and you filled that void in the market, as well as meeting your partners too, to be able to expand what kind of leads you could bring in? How were you able to find that specific client that was looking for that specific type of work?
That really comes down to, I think, my perspective on social media and having like a modern business in terms of how people view you. So having a really nice, simple website. I use Squarespace. I've built all my websites myself and found it quite easy now, up until like eight years ago or so, where it was WordPress. It was a nightmare. But now they're all quite simple and look awesome. So that and also coupled with like Instagram, especially, has been huge, and not just for like finding clients, but for being able to sort of curate how my business looked, to make it really look clean and professional. Only post like the top percentage of pictures that I have of my projects. And that was really good for like those business to business connections as well. So contacting local businesses, like other contractors, getting them to view our work and start to get some like more stone facing work through them. And then just building relationships as well. So I've been able to utilize that now with my new company, but before we would do trade shows, we'd get out there and meet some of these bigger contractors and get some face to face with them and just get to know, you know, what they're into, sort of let them know who we are. It's really that networking, I think, that benefits a lot in a lot of ways, and not just right away, but it builds up, right? So all of those things pieced together add up. And if you can set yourself up, especially in like a masonry or a hardscape company, where your older competition isn't up on these things, so they don't have a modern website. Sometimes they don't even have a website. If you can put yourself out there and get people searching on Google for you and finding you easily, you're going to get a lot of calls and a lot of leads. And then once you get to that point, you can sort of pick and choose your clientele, right? Which is pretty cool. It's a really good place to be in. So it takes a while to get there, but all those little things add up.
You also mentioned when dealing with your students that there's just so many niches that you can get into in this industry. And if you become a master of one of those, it's easy for you to kind of explode that and be really well known for that specific thing. So that must be a good idea as well, and really helped you.
Yeah, I was just going to say, people don't really value an online presence as much as they should, I think. So in this modern era, like search engine optimization is probably the biggest thing you can do to really boost yourself. So making sure that I don't do it a lot as much as I should, but blogging and setting yourself up so you have a really nice online profile that people can search and find you. Otherwise, you're kind of just lost to word of mouth, which is kind of the old school way to go, which a lot of people still run their business on. But
definitely,
if you want to get ahead, you have to put that extra work in on the back end for sure.
Absolutely. And when things are so good and you're so busy, it's so easy to get to put that on the back burner. And then when times start to get a little bit more tough, that's when you're starting to scramble to try to get these things together that you wish you'd kind of put in the work, or at least outsourced it when times were good, to be able to put these things into place, right?
Yeah, good point. Yeah.
I want to get into your tools of the trade with natural stone, because I know that you got a bunch of different chisels in your tool bag, and I don't know what everything does. And I think even though this is an audio platform, not visual, can we go through chisel by chisel and kind of explain what each of them do and what each of them accomplish, starting with quite specifically, you know, why can't we just use like a cold chisel? Why do we have, you know, carbide tips chisels? What does that do for us in shaping natural stone?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so shaping natural stone is probably my most fun thing to actually do. It's so satisfying.
I love watching your videos, like just seeing the natural stone taking shape. It's incredible.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. So the carbide tip chisels are like, they're huge. The difference in feel and how much you can actually accomplish in a day versus a cold chisel is just, you can't really compare. Obviously, they're more cost, but I like to always say that they're lifelong tools. Like, you buy a chisel and you don't lose it or bury it in the dirt where you're working, you're going to have it forever. So I use a pointed chisel for really hard, like facing stone. So that's like a really small point on it. And that's really going to be good for taking off like high points in the rock, making sure that we can fit rocks really nice and tight together for wall applications. So that's basically all I use for most of my natural stone walls is just a hammer and pointed chisel. For bluestone, so for like splitting and making shapes, I'll use just a tracer. So there's a couple different shapes you can get. It has like a longer, sort of wider wedge on it on the face, and you're just gonna have to find that rhythm where, like I would say, like a double tap and move your way across the line, back and forth, back and forth. You're not gonna chisel right through it all right away. You have to take your time and get a feel for it. But a simple tracer is really gonna split a lot of pieces nice and easy. Plus, you can use it on the edge of the stone to make a nice chiseled edge instead of like just a cut edge, right? So if you're doing a stair tread and you want like a nice natural look on the face, any tracer will do that. Or you can get into more of like a specialty tracer that has like a flat edge on it. So it's kind of like a square edge. That'll do a bit of a nicer job on that finishing edge and make it a little bit cleaner. So those are the three that I use. I haven't really needed anything else. And yeah, I love them. They're really, really nice tools. I think they're Swedish made, but we get them from Micon Stone Tools here in Vancouver, Granville Island.
Is there any ongoing work to keep them like as pristine as possible? Like, is there anything that you would need to do to have them as lifelong tools, or is it just a matter of, you know what, we're gonna wear it down eventually, maybe, and replace them? Like, what goes on into that?
Well, the thing with them is that you're striking them a lot, especially with natural stone walls. So you will sort of mushroom out the back, the actual striking point, a fair amount. So the biggest thing is you just don't want those burrs coming off and like slipping and getting into your hand. So it's not really like the chisel is going to take forever to wear down, but it's more of a safety thing. So usually just grind those off after a while once you see them start to stick out. You can actually sharpen the carbide over time. So you can actually send it back or get it sharpened. I've never had to do that, and I've been using the same chisels for years. And don't see any change in performance. So yeah, that's pretty much about it, other than like putting some colored tape on it or something so you don't lose it while it's sitting around on the job site.
That's a good idea,
Yeah.
especially with those smaller chisels. With that, is it just a matter of kind of putting in the time, putting in the hours to really get a feel for, especially building like a natural stone wall and getting those fits together, or to get that nice edge on a stair tread, or shaping flagstone? Is it just a matter of, putting in the hours, maybe buying some natural stone pieces from a supplier and just, practicing on your own?
Totally. I think I tried to make it so that my YouTube videos show a little bit of the rhythm to how you should be chiseling. But it's not just the rhythm, it's sort of the strike force as well. So there's like a sharpness to how you hit that I think is important. You can hear it, you can feel it, you kind of want to give it a good pop. But then, yeah, if you strike too hard or give too much force behind it, you're going to break the stone where you don't want to. It's a lot of trial and error. Same with fitting stones. Like you're picking all the best rocks you can, but you're really just like choosing a couple that are going to work and then picking the best one and then trying to chisel it. You might break it and have to move on to a new one. It's just trial and error all day, every day until you get those pieces to fit and shape up nicely. So yeah, it's kind of funny like that.
Kevin, there's a few questions that I ask every business owner, every hardscaper that comes on the show that I do want to get to here. The first one is, do you have a horror story from your time in business? Doesn't have to be a big one. It could be a small one, could be problems with a client, problems with a job. But do you have a horror story in your time in business that you would want to share? And the reason why I ask this is we have a lot of contractors or contractors that want, or people that want to start a contracting business, and to let them know like what could happen on a job site or what could happen with a client, just to prepare them for this kind of industry, and maybe even put safeguards in place to prevent those things. But Kevin, do you have a horror story that you would want to share here?
I think the biggest one that comes to mind is, and the theme here is communication. So I had this client where we did a small project for him, and it was a small rock wall. It was like a 1 or 2 day project, so I wasn't worried about getting a deposit. I typically do anyway, so I usually collect a deposit no matter how big the job is. But this one I knew we were going to be done basically right away. So it's just like, okay, we'll do it. We're not really going to take a hit on materials. Like it's nothing. So that was great. And then the next phase was larger. And I realize now that I could have communicated a lot better in terms of what I was expecting and what I was going to be asking for, just giving them a good lead up into what like the contract is going to be. Basically, like I'm going to need a deposit. We're ordering like $10,000 worth of material. Like this is how it's all going to go. These are the steps. And if he had any objections at that point, then we would have just been like, okay, well, we can't do it, or we would have figured something out. But anyway, it ended up being a little bit too late for that. And I asked for a deposit, and he took that as, for some reason, something shady was going on. He just was not feeling it. And this has happened a couple times. People are just like, no, why am I giving you a deposit? Well, no, this is how my business works. And this is what I need to do the job well. So he basically just like said, no, I'm going to find someone else. And ended up writing a really bad review on Google in terms of how I was dealing with the situation. So I think the biggest lesson there was like, I needed to have a little bit more of like a thicker skin to not let that kind of stuff get to me, knowing that what I was doing was to protect my business. And not just give in to that kind of thing either, right? You don't want to just like have a client walk all over you when you need that money or you need a deposit to secure a spot in your schedule and make things happen, protect your crew, all that kind of stuff. So yeah, that was the biggest thing. Like it was really hard to see that Google review up for a while. Just like, yeah. And we didn't have very many at that point for my business. So it was actually a pretty big hit on like it was like 3 out of 5 stars we were at. So it actually spurred me to get a whole bunch of positive Google reviews from clients that I've never asked them for. So it worked out well in the end. But yeah, it's a little tough to get that like negative feedback. And it was almost like a personal attack on me as well, which is really hard to hear. So yeah, that was my biggest sort of client horror story, I guess.
Yeah, that's a tough one too. It's not like you're doing something wrong. You're just, protecting yourself. And unfortunately, the client doesn't understand that. And then for them to take that to the next step and to leave you a negative review, that's a tough one to swallow for sure.
Other than that, I don't know. There's always something that like there might be little repairs that need to happen, or you find out that you made a mistake somewhere. But the thing with that is like I'm usually doing a lot of the finishing work myself. Like I didn't have like people under me doing that. So I always took responsibility for it, and just making sure that, yeah, those clients are happy and they're always really good they're always really good sort of cheering squad for you if you do things well, even if it is a repair, right? You come back and do it well for them and they can get you another couple of projects, hopefully.
Anybody that you'd want to give a shout out here that has helped you along your journey in this industry? That could be online, offline, maybe people that you look to for inspiration, or anything in terms of the industry, or even resources that has helped you along the way.
I think it's funny. I appreciate every single person that I've worked with over the years. I had a lot of opportunity for the first landscape construction company that I worked for here in Victoria. I got to work with some incredible people. This one German landscape construction specialist, especially, was really, really good to learn from. And there was a whole team of people that worked there for a while. It was like a dream team of landscape construction people. So yeah, basically everyone that I've worked with in the past has given me so much information and value. I take a little bit of each of them and put it into everything that I'm doing now. So I really appreciate that. But there's been some really awesome people that I've found in the industry recently, like the guys over at Romex, like Romex Joe. Steve with City Green has been really good. We're sort of working on some content together now, which is a lot of fun. Wayne with PMI Industries, so he just like track machine sales and stuff like that, among other things. He's been a really good source for information as well. The guys at Great North Hardscape have been awesome too. So yeah, lots of really good people. I think it's cool that they see like sort of what both of us are trying to do, right? Like there's not a lot to gain from it other than like the whole industry grows together. And I think that's really important. That's why I love what you're doing as well, because a lot of companies and a lot of people are sort of protectionist about their information and the way that they do things, and they don't want to like tell other people. But I've always had the opposite perspective, where if we can network and sort of build each other up together, we gain a lot more and move the industry farther along.
there's more than enough space for everybody. And, especially since, like you mentioned, and I'm going to bring this up again, there's so many different niches in this industry, and for people to specialize in certain things and to really kind of give back to the industry, like you mentioned, with those different niches and everything that we do together, it will only build this industry up. That's why I'm always more than happy to promote anybody that is doing that same thing, that is, giving back as much as especially you are with your YouTube channel and with your website and the instruction that you're giving to students coming up and business owners. So yeah, I completely agree with everything that you said there.
Yeah, I appreciate that. One of the big things that's next for me actually is I just worked with people at Inlight. They came out and shot some video with me. So that's going to be my next online course, is going to be landscape lighting, and kind of pairing that with how to install lights in Hardscape and stuff like that. So it'll be a cool free resource as well. So it'll be a free online class, and there's lots of sort of video content. And I really picked Tom with Inlight, picked his brain on his perspective of it all. So not just like the physical installs, but the mentality behind it, and kind of that modern lighting install, which is pretty cool. The industry's changed a lot for lighting, so, and it adds so much value. Like I see a lot of the pictures that you post on I'm a hardscaper and stuff like that, where it's like awesome hardscape, but then the lighting just sets it off, right? It just makes it look so much cooler. So yeah, looking forward to that.
Yeah, we're big fans of Inlight here as well. So that's a great product, especially if you're getting into landscape lighting, hardscape lighting, all of that. Yeah, Kevin, I have maybe a couple more questions here, but this is a big one. It's what I ask everybody that comes on the show here, and that is, what is one thing you know now that you wish you knew from the beginning? And this could be anything related. This could be personal, business. This could be getting into teaching everything that you're teaching. But what is that one thing you know now that you wish you knew from the beginning?
Yeah, it's a hard question. I think that it's just funny how the industry will take you into places you might not think you're headed to, but you're ready for. So the thing that I've really sort of tried to do now, as opposed to in the past, is put myself in places where I might be a little bit uncomfortable, or I know that I need to grow into. So sort of taking that next step. And I think that's something that I didn't really have the perspective of when I first started. But it sort of developed over time, which is take as much experience as you can from everything that you do, even if you're shoveling gravel for a couple of days working for a company. Get what you can out of it. Pick the brain of the owner, of the managers, like figure out what's going on behind the scenes. Just start to really build up that information bank for yourself over time. I think having that perspective coming into the hardscape industry is super important.
Excellent way to end this, actually. So, Kevin, thank you so much for joining us here, for taking the time to do this. Where do you want to send our audience? Where can we learn more about everything that you've got going on, whether that be the online courses that you're doing, the YouTube channel, informational videos that you're putting out there? Where can our audience go to find out more about you?
Then basically you can just search Hardscape Canada Training on my YouTube or on Google. My website's hardscapetraining.ca. Tons of free videos, content on there. Even my online courses, there's a bunch of free ones as well. So yeah, obviously Instagram too, hardscapecanada.kevin.
Awesome, Kevin. Thank you so much for your time.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to today's podcast episode. Once again, go check out Cycle CPA at cycle_CPA on Instagram, cyclecpa.com. Let them know How to Hardscape sent you for $200 off bookkeeping, accounting, or CFO services, as well as Inlight Design on Instagram. That's INLITE Design on Instagram. Go give them a follow, get some inspiration from their page, and check out their products that they have available for outdoor lighting in our industry. And we look forward to meeting with you next week on the How to Hardscape podcast.